man of the hour. This evening we have a very distinguished guest. We have had his name on our list of people that we wanted to give a program to the society for a very long time, and this year we called him and we didn't even have to twist his arm. He said yes. And I was fortunate enough to work with him. He brought his postcards over and I was able to scan them, and I consider that a great privilege because I'm a history buff, like most of us that come to the Historical Society, and just the little tidbits of interesting history that I learned was worth the effort of scanning all the pictures and putting this stuff together. So with that being said, I'm offering my services. So if anybody has a topic, a collection of photos, family history, something that's related to Moultonborough, and they would like to put a program together, between Norman and I, we will make it happen. With that being said, I'd like to introduce Dick, who is a native of Moultonborough. He has a very small collection of postcards, only 470 postcards of the town of Moultonborough, of which he selected approximately 60 to show us tonight. So without further ado, Mr. Wakefield. I think we may want the lights out here.
Yeah, probably. Can you hear me all right if I don't use them? There's no microphone here. I think I should move this so that people can see.
Absolutely. I do that because I'll sit there and shake my papers.
Move myself so that people can see.
That could be fun.
First, Mary is right. I'm going to tell you, the work that she did on this was amazing because I just brought a stack of postcards over. I had them in the order that I wanted to see them. I wanted you to see them. And it's amazing. It's amazing. I'm really pleased. And this isn't really a postcard here, but it's a good opening that Mary, the slide that Mary's made as well. So, collecting postcards of Moultonborough, I thought this won't take long. I'm just going to pick up all the Moultonborough postcards. Been at it for 20 years anyway. And I keep finding more, and sometimes I have to say, do I really want to spend that much money on that particular postcard? But more often what happens is I say, oh, here's one I don't have, and I'll bring it home, and then I'll discover, oh yes, I do. So I have a stack about this thick that at some point Norman, I think, is going to have a chance to look at and pick and choose from. As long as he'll pay me half what I paid for. Only half. Good deal. The other thing in collecting Moultonborough postcards, you go to the postcard shows or you go to where there's somebody has a lot of postcards laid out, and if they separate them by town, if you want Moultonborough postcards, you've got to look for Moultonborough. You've got to look for Melvin Village because of the mailing address for Bald Peak, for instance, and some of the people on that end of town. You've got to look for Center Harbor because up until not all that long ago, the mailing address for Center Harbor encompassed even this side of Moultonborough Neck Road and all of Moultonborough Neck, and also Ossipee. And Ossipee, because of Ossipee Mountain Park, these dealers don't know that Ossipee Mountain Park is in Moultonborough. It's the castle property. You're not going to see any postcards of that because I've got a book this thick of just those, and I didn't want to, I didn't want everybody just glazing over and going to sleep on me.
Could you talk just a little bit louder, please?
I will. Okay, I'll do my best.
Okay.
So the way I've laid these out more or less is from the Tuftonborough line to the Center Harbor line with a couple of little short excursions, but I didn't put in any of the Moultonborough Neck ones or any of the Ossipee Park, Castle in the Clouds postcards as well. And I edited fairly severely because, as there's just too many otherwise. But I think you're going to find some of these a little interesting. So I guess we can start. Thank you, Barbara. Okay. This was given to me, this card was given to me by Jim Martis. He said, you know, I found this Moultonborough postcard. I thought you'd like it. And he gave it to me. And Jim will tell you that that's from Cannon Mountain, looking across at Jim Houston is a skier, Mount Lafayette, and what the Hut Boys tried to call Truman there. It's a little lump in the ridge between Mount Lincoln and Mount Lafayette. But on the back of this card, so next is this is down near Moultonborough. That's the garage. It's about the only postcard I've seen of the garage at Bald Peak Country Club, but that garage is in Moultonborough, to the best of my knowledge. And then the next one, Mary, is of the clubhouse at Bald Peak. But then if you come on up 109, not far from Bald Peak, these are the Bon Air camps. Does everybody know where those are, or were? At Clark's Landing. It belonged to Geneva's when I was a kid, and Grace and Pete Geneva had them, and their son Peter was a classmate of mine, part of each school year, because they spent their winters in Florida. Later it was split up, it was called the Bon Air and Silver Stag, and I'm not even sure what the configuration is down there now. And the Three Bridges, does everybody know where Three Bridges is? Three Bridges is where 109 crosses the Shannon Brook, right by the road to States Landing. The States Landing Road would be on the far side from here of that road, and that's coming up through Black's Woods. And that car right there is a Buick. I think there'll be a little more about that later. There was a fellow who had a Buick dealership who also did postcards. And his dealership was in Manchester, New Hampshire. A guy named Frank Swallow. Okay. Halfway Brook. This is, if you're familiar, that's the White House Field, which is now woods. The Halfway Brook crosses Route 109. If you're familiar with the Horace and Ernestine Richardson house, it's this side, west, if you think of 109 as east-west, of the end of the Lee Road that comes out on 109 right near Bucky's. There's a big field, that's the Richardson field. This field adjoined that big Richardson field, and when I was a kid, they played baseball there. And you could look down across and see the chimneys of the house, the White House place on Lee Road, near Homestead Farm. But I have one postcard of this that says Halfway Brook, near Center Harbor, New Hampshire. And I found it in the Center Harbor pile. Berry Pond. This is not many people see this view, because this is from out across the pond. Route 25 goes right along over here. And I'm not sure, but I think that's the Jonas Berry place, which is across the corner from me at Goss Corner on 109. 109 didn't used to come out there, but it was a field all the way through. That's Black Snow Mountain. The next one. This is near Berry Pond, so the Berry Pond in the country fair, and the next one I think is a view of the front of it some years ago when it was the country fair at Cozy Inn. Allison Parker Kimball. But before that time, my father's mother, Bessie Canning Wakefield was divorced from my grandfather and married Dr. Frank Lovering, and that was their home. And actually, my cousin Diane was sitting right there, Diane Bartlett. Her mother told me that when she was a girl, she stayed there some with her mother and doctor, and she woke up one night because the room was illuminated. It was dark, but the room was illuminated, and the homestead was burning. The homestead was, I've got a slide of it coming up here, was the home of George Blanchard, and it was a summer hotel, and it burned, and actually this library was built on that property around 1930. Next. And this is an interior, and in one of the rooms, and when in the 1970s there was a bar was in this room when Ken Smith had the Country Fair in, and that bookcase right there is interesting. It was built actually by Diane's father and his partner. Did some renovation in there, Fred Davis and Cliff Downs, and that bookcase is a door as well. That whole thing would swing out of the way. You could go back into the kitchen. This is a little bit more distant view of it. I say when I was a kid, it was owned by Allison Parker Kimball, and they had Dalmatian dogs named Nip and Tuck, and we would get a Christmas card every year, Allison Parker, Nip and Tuck. And if we went in on Halloween, trick-or-treating, they'd bring us into that same little room and sit us down. It wasn't the main dining room, of course, and give you a little dish of ice cream, and Mr. Kimball would come over and pull a dime from behind your ear. You can see the well curb right there. That was the well at Marion Goodwin's home, which was right back there. And I think the next picture will show that. That's still the Country Fair in there, and that's Marion's house. 109, old 109 goes across here, 25 on out towards the new end of 109. Black Snout Mountain again. And you can see Route 25 was not paved. Okay. Now, you get up to the top of the hill. I'm just taking a little side step here. If you turn right here in front of the library and headed up Holland Hill, right after Ralph Goodwin's store, or the George Richardson store, or the Old Country Store now, was the residence of B.J. Bartlett. It was Bert and Gert and Bert Bartlett. Gertrude Bartlett, who was my dad's first grade school teacher, lived in that house. That house is gone. It was taken down just a few years ago, and it's now part of the parking facility for the Old Country Store.
That was the back of it.
That's the back of that card, and the reason, I just wanted you to see the handwriting. It's kind of hard to tell, but Gertrude Glidden Bartlett, and I don't know how she ties in with our Gliddens here in town, but she must. I remember her as quite an old lady who actually had severe diabetes. This was written in 1914, say. Okay. And then further on up the hill, at the top, what we think of as Holland Hill House, that was the Henry Boyle place, known as Hillcrest Farm, and he had a summer boarding place there as well. This is the homestead. Oh, Mary, wonderful. We put this is information from the back. $7 and $8 a week, or $2 a day to stay there. And he had a car. And he was one of the first people in town that had a car, and he actually would take people on excursions, take them up to the White Mountains. And that, my father told me, was George Blanchard right there. And, oh, an interesting sidelight to that house that burned, that was right here, is where Adele Victorine Blanchard Taylor was born. He was the librarian here for 46 years. It was new. It was new. And no lawn yet, and no, well, I guess they did have looks like they might have had that brick walk in that Randy Houston repaired, didn't you, Randy? It was a gym a few years ago. That's about 1930, right there. And many of the postcards, pictures of Moultonborough taken from the library lawn. This is fairly early because look at the steeple on the church.
Yeah.
It's different. And the next one is going to show. That's the old bandstand. And the country fair, the Tilton Brothers store, Von Porter's building. That right there is now, it's the next building. I forget the name of the business that's in there.
Zealot.
Huh?
Zealot?
Zealot, yeah. And it's a two-story house now. It was like a Cape Cod type house there. I always said it was before Lamprey raised the roof. And I think you can see, I think that's probably part of the Grange Hall right there. I understand the bandstand was eventually moved from there. It was on the parsonage lawn. The parsonage is no more, but it's off to this side of the library here. And then they said it was moved down onto Blake Road and just rotted away. The story that I was told by some old timers. I often wonder who these children were. That's old enough. My father could have been one of those kids. He was born in '06. Okay. A little bit later, see the steeple is more as it looks now. This building burned a few years ago. It was gutted and then they tore it down. It was the Paul Blanchard store. And I think I've got two in a row here that are about the same. But you see this car, these really stand up well to being blown up.
Yeah.
I'm really pleased. Yes?
Wasn't there a fountain or a watering trough in the square sometime?
There was a well right there.
Well,
In the last one you could see it, it's right before in front of the bandstand.
Yeah.
Right in front of that.
Can you go backwards one just for no,
I don't know.
don't try. Okay.
We're going too
Technology is
good.
wonderful. Let's see the next one if we may, because I think the next one is going to show that the car that was in motion, there you can see the well.
Yeah.
The car that was in motion here pulled over there and stopped. And the other car is still sitting there. Those were taken within minutes of one another, whenever that was. It was a long time ago, obviously.
I'm just curious, Nick, when I was doing this, they have numbers often after, and I just copied whatever was on the cards so everybody could see.
Yeah.
Do you know what the significance of those were?
That was for the convenience, apparently, of the fellows doing the photographs and selling the postcards. These are real photos. I have a few that were actually made from real photos rather than the dot matrix type printing. And those stand up really well if you put a loop on them. You can really get detail. You can see a lot of detail. Next one. Yet another. Same scene, dirt road. Nothing else to tell you about except that looks like another well right there, doesn't it? And there's the town well there.
Do you know what year the road was paved?
I think it was paved in the 20s. They were doing the paving in the 20s and the early 30s.
It's 1937, I was told.
37? Okay, so not the early 30s then. Yeah. And they called it the main trunk line or something they talked about. And Route 109 used to be called 107. I've seen that referred to as 107 a few times. But it looked like a charming place. Whoop.
Oh, you went back.
We did go
Yeah.
backwards.
Did you manage to go backwards? Oh yeah, you're going backwards. Now you're going forward. One more.
It did it on its own.
Oh, next one. The Hi There Cafe. Let's eat, it says. Leela Galula, who was a cram. Her brother was Bernard Cram from Shoot, from Wolfbrook, Cram, fish and game guy.
So 58.
Yeah, this is in the late 50s. I almost think that car right there belonged to Millard Roy Foss. I think so. I'm not, don't hold me to it, but I think so. Next. I got a more modern one. Now there. That's Lily Galuli's car. And this guy cooked in there some, and most of you probably know him, Daniel Bryant.
Oh, yeah.
Whose is that, Randy?
Dad's car.
Whose?
No, they had a four-door.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Where was that?
They hadn't changed the signage much by that time. Okay. You can see the church in the background there. Now, the Old Country Store, when it was George Richardson, was a stage stop. And if you read some of the old guidebooks, I have one in particular. It's a trip in Osgood's from 1823 or something, to talk about the stage routes to the White Mountains. And they mention, you know, Moultonborough and Red Hill and everything, and then they say, of course, they were going out Route 25, where Route 25 is. And it said, on the way to Tamworth, or after Moultonborough, you're going along, and you pass through a corner of Sandwich. I taunt my friends from Sandwich with this, because then, in parentheses, a small rocky town of little interest. Then you come to Tamworth. Hey, but you have to wonder who they are. There was a telephone. Right there, they had a telephone at George Richardson's. And it was George Richardson's when my father was a kid. Next one, please. I think I'm featuring, yeah, here we go. That's the peddler's wagon that when, a few years ago, when Paul Blanchard's, that building burned, that peddler's wagon was down underneath in the cellar, burned. And when Dick St. Clair was, and this is when Dick St. Clair had the Old Country Store, you see the library here. My brother used to have to wheel that thing, stand between the shafts, and his summer job, he worked at the Old Country Store for several summers, was wheel that thing around and set it there and chop the wheels so that people could see it. But I believe it belonged, initially, it was Andrew Jackson Goodwin's peddler's wagon. And then Ralph Goodwin bought George Richardson's store, and it was, that's when it was an Old Country Store. Yep. And here's the Indian, I had to put him in. That's an interior of the store, when it was the Old Country Store and Museum, when Dick St. Clair had it. And the only reason I put this in is a bit of vanity, because the little kids standing there looking at the little naughty peep show, the girls, they had in bathing costumes. Of course, they had sleeves on them and everything. That's me, though. Because I remember being in there when the guy was taking the pictures. And then for a while, the post office moved into this room to the right. And can remember going in, and because Jesse George Thompson was the postmaster. That looks to me like mid to late 50s, just from that vehicle there.
Where was it before the post office? Because I only remember it there.
Yeah, initially, I remember when I was a kid, when you went in the front door,
Yeah.
the boxes and everything were to your left, right there.
Okay.
And you couldn't really get back to the stairs to go up where they have the museum upstairs. I do remember going in there and having Ralph Goodwin hand my mother the mail from box 115, which we still have. My father got when he was 13 years old, when he left home and was boarding with the Hatfields up here. Okay. And there's one of the Methodist Church. I have an older postcard, but it's hard to reproduce. It's in blue tones. And it's the M.E. Church, Moultonborough, New Hampshire, Methodist Episcopal Church, Moultonborough, New Hampshire. But we still had the two doors, and I'm guessing again in the mid-50s. Is there still a weather vane?
Been restored and put back on there.
It has?
But had the E missing for years.
Okay.
There's another story to that.
Okay. I don't want to go up there.
No.
Now I kind of looking back, you've moved up a little bit here, and if you put a loop on this actual postcard, it's Tilton Brothers store, and also you can find the price of gas was, I think it was 23 cents. And then also in the loop, and you can't even begin to see it here, but there's a lady sitting in a chair right on the front porch there, and I think it might have been, what was her name? Paul Blanchard's girlfriend,
That one I can't get.
somebody. Oh, I'm the only one in the room old enough to know, and I can't remember her name right now. I'll probably blurt it out in a while. But, you know, there were two general stores right side by side in the town of Moulton. Just there, well, there were three. There were three. We're going to see another one in a minute. I don't think it was Tilton Brothers at that point. It might have been Freeze's, because this is the building where Zellick is before Lamprey raised the roof and the attached barn and everything. And I'm guessing that these people might have been the Freeze family, but I just don't know. And that does look like an O, doesn't it?
I had a hard time.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be a U.
You,
Yeah.
Maplehurst. I looked and looked and looked.
R.S. Freeze, proprietor, Moultonborough, New Hampshire, and that was number 24, and they put that in between the two of the cars, number 23, 22, 25 or so. Further up, now they raised the roof, you see, and that was the Black Eagle at that point, when Russell and Pat Lamprey had it, and Pat had a gift shop in there. And this is the house that Leela Galooly lived in, where the Chabides live now, that have Artie's place, Artie Chabides. Okay. See, and that's the third store right there. That was Ellen's and general store, and before that it was the Friendly Store, Kurt Beaton. And then Ellen had that taken down. Actually, before it was Kurt Beaton's store, it was someone's home. Because when he was a young fellow, young bachelor, my father actually boarded there, had a room, lived in that building. And the Adele Taylor building was basically right across the street through there. I think we're talking, that might not have been Ellen's at that point. Those cars are telling me that was late 40s. So that was still the Friendly Store, Beaton's.
I love the rain. The postcard.
Yeah, the fact that they made a
rain day.
postcard of a rainy scene, yeah. You've moved up just a little further. Now here's that other well. There's a lady drawing water at the well. And that was in front of where the Hi There Cafe or Leela Galooly's house, I believe. That's the porch of Maplehurst, I believe, right there. And right there, put a loop on it, it's a beautiful old motorcycle. Might have been an old Harley. I think we're talking before 1920 there. Same day, a little further up the street, the motorcycle is still there, and it was, crabapple trees were blooming. It must have been in May. And I think that's the Glidden House. There's that bay window. I was just looking at that painting you
Yeah.
did the other day.
Yep.
And somebody walking right there. And I just see those, and I'd like to have a time machine. I can just go back there for a minute and see if that's my uncle. Next. This looks familiar. The Lamprey house. 20s or 30s, that car right there. But it looks good, doesn't it?
Did it go back
Yeah,
again?
I think it did, yeah.
It has a mind of its own.
Okay. The guy with the Buick, Frank Swallow. This was on his cards right here. And I got several of these that were sent to Mrs. Clifford Wood from Lewis. And it was interesting that the Woods owned, well, Mrs. Wood was a daughter of Lou Fales. Catnip Lodge, if you're familiar with the Catnip Lodge down by these mills. These mills, yeah. Okay. Now we've worked our way all the way over to Moultonborough Falls. And I think we're looking upstream. So Garland Pond is up here. There's a section of Boggy River that you can get a rowboat all the way down about there. It's no longer being, they actually used it as a driving dam, I believe, for logs. And this is about from the bridge at Moultonborough Falls. And that one is the Clyde Foss house, I believe. And this Deer Hill. And there's that Buick. Another Frank Swallow card.
So which house would be on the right?
It's still there, I believe. That's the two-story house just below. There are three houses right along there. That one, I can't. Right after Sheridan Road, and the next one was a little small, like a little half cape, and that's where Eileen Martin was living, and that house is for sale right now. The next one after that was, help me Randy, what's his name?
I think Mrs. Martin, up the hill on the right there was,
David Webster.
oh yeah.
Most recently, the most recent ones I remember, Mr. and Mrs. Webster, who were the parents of Dave Webster.
Across the street where Ralph Dale's daughter lives, whose house was that?
Yeah. Well, that's that one there. This is the one just below, I believe, where I don't know. I can never remember the man's name. I think he's the principal of the grammar school over in Guilford. He doesn't work in town. Okay. This is fun. All the way to the Red Hill camps. Some of which are missing now. This, if you're familiar with the Bob House restaurant, it's right along there. And these were built by Harry Richardson, I believe, and then his daughter and her husband operated after that, Harry Perkins and Clara. Clara, who was everybody's 3rd and 4th grade teacher. You had her, and
Oh yeah.
Mrs. Perkins.
So
The
why?
Shaws.
And so married, yeah. Blink Bonnie Enterprises, Red Hill Restaurant. That was Ben's Steakhouse for a while. I had a guy in town here, Dick Jackson, told me he'd go in there and go in and sit down and order a steak. And then you'd hear the screen door slam shut. Because Ben would then get in his car, drive to the Cracker Box store, buy your steak, come back and prepare it. I don't remember ever seeing that sign, though. I think that's really neat. Okay, side trip. Up the Red Hill Road after that, if you take a right, go up the Red Hill Road, right at the end where Red Hill Road intersects Sibley Road was the Sibley Fountain. And apparently it was unique enough. It's a watering trough, I suppose, for people with horses. It's right at that junction. Green's Corner. I don't know what house that is. That's Black Snout Mountain. But I think this this vehicle, this horse-drawn vehicle is coming up to what's now Route 25. I think that's the neck road right there, and that house.
Granny Hood's house?
Huh?
Is that Granny Hood's house?
It's almost like it's too close to
It looks too close
the road. I think it's something that was taken down later to make room for when Bernie built the store there. And it was a Gulf station right there before you went across the street.
So which side of?
If
That's
you're
not
coming
where
up,
Molly
if you're
Dearborn-
coming up Moultonborough Neck Road, it's on your
Yeah.
right. It's right where, well, it was the Cracker Box when I was a kid. Well, actually, I can remember Bernie had a store there, Cracker Box.
So that's on the other side of the road? Like where Abishai, like where Molly Dearborn lived? Would that be that house?
No, across the road,
Across the road.
across from the Dearborn place, yeah.
Actually, that looks like Bob Fletcher's house.
No, I've got that though.
You do, okay.
Oh, yeah, we'll come to that. But that's beyond Green's Corner.
Right.
This is interesting to me because the Cambridge house, that's the first Cambridge house that burned about 1913. Green's Corner from on down at the bottom of the hill near the Baptist church and Lake Quinnebog.
Yeah.
That's the only time I've ever seen Canasatka referred to by another name other than my father called it Long Pond.
Like Kennesaw.
I am older than you.
Remember it as Quinnebog? Dad always called him Round Pond and Long Pond. Round Pond being the one upstream, which is, what do they call that? Wakanda, yeah. But I think Canasatka and Wakanda were kind of real estate agent names, so sound a little bit more like, well, Wakanda and Quinnebog are good Indian names too. Anyway, that's just a little different. I think I've got a couple more coming up here of the Cambridge. There's the old Cambridge house, the one that burned down. And it was in the Green family.
Green?
Greens, yeah, at Green's Corner. And after that burned, they built the next one, which is still there, if you're familiar with the gambrel roof. Which I believe there are apartments in there now, and when I was a kid, this belonged to my aunt, Charlotte Ames. And she actually had a rest home there. She had 4 or 5 elderly folks who lived there. And I went over, my mother used to go and help her prepare meals sometimes. And the older people, I was like a first grader. And I just go in and sit down and tell me stories and wonderful lies. Guy told me how he chopped wood on Barge Hill and people thought it was snowing, the chips flew so fast. Again, you're down, you're looking back at Green's Corner.
Telephone poles.
Yeah, it's getting a little, and color. It's color. Who's next? Oh, okay. Off Reading Lane, and the reason I put this in, I have 2 or 3 that were done. This was one of the ones that my Uncle Fred and Cliff Downs built for Charlie Gregson. Gregson had, and he rented them in the summer, and there's advertising on the back about parades and so forth with these cards. And there's a story that my Uncle Fred told, well, everybody's grown up here, I can tell this one, about they were really in a hurry because he had this thing rented. And it was a Friday afternoon, and they worked late to get everything done, get the furniture in it and everything, because this young couple was coming Saturday, they were getting married, and it was their honeymoon cottage. And the last thing before they went out the door, Cliff Downs and Fred got some string and some tin cans and just tied them all under the bed springs. Charlie was, of course he was an old bachelor, he was just terrible, but the young married couple thought it was the funniest thing they ever had. Maple Cottage, Robert Fletcher's, Randy right there. This is about opposite the end of Reading Lane, and it's still there. Dave and Priscilla Chase live there now. And this is, Canasatka is just down over the hill from there. Okay. And this is at what my father called Kelly Brook.
Yeah.
That's the mill, right? It was Kelly's mill. And they actually, the logs would be floated down Canasatka, a long pond, and then pulled across the road into the sawmill. And this is some time ago. Again, there's the principal source of transportation around here. Yeah. Another view, Old Mill Corner. This shows you some logs here, though, ready to be snaked across the road. And some folks standing around. Okay. We're almost done. We're getting towards Center Harbor. That's what we know is the Red Mill House at the end of Canasatka. I don't know what the business that's there is. Is there a business there?
Bait shop.
It's a bait shop? Yeah. And the outlet, and the mill was kind of off the picture here. And the town map calls that brook Blackie's Cove Brook, because it empties into Blackie's Cove, but it was Kelly Brook, according to my dad. I remember going smelting there. And then, of course, Route 25 didn't go up over the hill. It went around what we call Lakeshore Drive, and that's Oak Corner House, which was Caggiano's, right near the road to First Neck. Went out on Alpine Park Road. First Neck. There's 3 Moultonborough Necks. And what we think of as Moultonborough Neck is third. That's the big one. And the White Diamond Inn, Randy knows a little about this. Interior is there. Didn't you work there, Randall?
Oh, God.
And the Center Harbor Motel and Marina, the first, well, I mean knowing who owned it was Lemines. But before that, I couldn't, I don't know much of the history of that. That's way over on the other end of town from where I grew up. Goss Corner. And I didn't get very far from there for a long time. Okay, I think we got just 2 more here. Yeah, a little side trip up the Bean Road. I think I'm right. They call it Grove Hill Farm. Has this died? No. Center Harbor, New Hampshire, but I believe that that's the Lyman Scribner House.
Yes.
Am I right, Nancy? She's nodding.
Somebody else just said yes.
If you go up, it's on the left. If you go up Bean Road, and it's about, and you're in Moultonborough there, it's about, what, a mile? About opposite Layton's.
Across
That's
the
the yellow house?
Yeah, just before you get there.
That just comes
Center
so
Harbor.
close.
Yeah.
You'll see the picket fence before you,
Now
in
there's
front of the house now.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's 2 more. There's 2 more. There's this one. That's the Center Harbor Post Office, but it's in Moultonborough.
Yeah.
This was Fred Robbins' store, and the town line goes right there, and opposite side goes right up the Bean Road, or just the Center Harbor side of the Bean Road.
And the town of Moultonborough owns the land.
Yes, yes, they lease it for, what, $50 a year or something?
They don't own the building, but they own the land.
And they lease the land to the owner of the building.
Do you remember when Mrs. Banfield stood up and said that it can't be sold?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Because the pharmacy wanted to buy it that year, and they put it on the town warrant, and Mrs. Banfield got up and said, "You can't sell that land." And they said, "I moved the question," it was a done deal. Maybe you were.
I was the moderator, yes. I was there. And I think we have just one more. Another generic Moultonborough postcard. Anybody got anything to say? Questions? Yes, sir.
What was the process of making these postcards? Did the photographer actually print them and sell them, or did he work for a company that printed them and sold them? who had the rights to them and how did it all become a business?
You know, I think it varied. You know, like the Swallow cards, they'd be anywhere. Also, Belfast Publishing out of Belfast, Maine, did a lot of main streets. There's a book out of their pictures of main streets in New Hampshire and Maine. There's one just like one of mine here that I have. Some of them will say published for I.G. Lunt, Center Harbor, New Hampshire, which was later was Everett Heath's store. It's where Yikes is now, and actually that one that I showed earlier, the Halfway Brook, was published for the estate of A.J. Goodwin, Moultonborough, New Hampshire. It was Andrew Jackson Goodwin, who was Mary Goodwin's grandfather. So I guess it varied, you know. The same with commemorative plates. I don't have many. I've got 2 or 3 of the taken at Ossipee Park, published for A.S. or it was manufactured in Bavaria or some such place, but it'll say manufactured for A.S. Freeze, Moultonborough, New Hampshire.
Jan had somebody put them into postcard form with the mailing
Yes.
Print on the back so that
Yeah.
they could become postcards.
And you know you've got an older postcard if it doesn't have a vertical line on the back.
Oh.
Because up until 1907, you couldn't put a message, only the address on the back of the card. Which is why many of the cards I have, somebody has written all over the front of them, or around the edge.
Couldn't write on the back.
Yeah. And then in 1907, they divided the back so that then you could have a message on one side and address on the other, which to this day is what they are.
That's about the same time they changed the spelling of the name of the towns too. They shortened it. The towns that ended with O-U-G-H, the post office decreed that it would be O-R-O.
Yeah, except the town of Moultonborough didn't go along with that.
Well,
As a town, it's still the official spelling of the town.
yeah,
Yeah.
the post offices, the U.S. Post Office decreed that O-U-G-H would be eliminated and it would be O-R-O because it would fit on a smaller address.
Yeah, and
Foxborough, Massachusetts is another one.
yeah, think of the money they saved in ink.
That was another thing that went before the town meeting though, to keep the ORO according to that, like in 1940.
Oh, the town wasn't having any part of it,
Yeah,
to change it.
yeah.
Parker Kimball was the one who wanted to do that, because he had postcards he wanted. Sure. Well, I can't thank you enough, it was great fun, and I can't thank Mary enough for all the work.
See how easy that was? So get your collections together, folks.